Hello and welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm the jolly old elf, Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers. Alongside me is Jeffrey Graham of the Connection Newspapers, the strawberry blondish red-headed reindeer. Which reindeer are you, Jeffrey? Are you
Vixen?
Vixen, a great 80s band and a great reindeer at that. Fairfax Sports Report tonight, we've got state championship football. We've got holiday hoops. We've got wrestling, gymnastics. We've got baseball in D.C.
Or do we?
Or do we? Here on the Fairfax Sports Report, we want to thank our sponsors first, the underwriters, the folks that make this show possible. Quality Care Ford Service Center for all your Quality Care Ford Service Center needs, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And of course, CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And as usual, I mean, without them, there is no show.
There is nothing.
Do you think you have credibility wearing those?
None. None.
Well, keep them on. They're very becoming of you.
Thank you.
When you heard the final score of the Robinson-Lansdowne Division VI Virginia AAA state championship football game, what was your reaction?
I thought it was backwards. You know, when you go down there, you know, especially coming off of last year's final when Westfield had, you know, pretty much destroyed Lansdowne, and coming off of Robinson's, you know, semifinal win over Hilton, you're thinking, you know, they're going all the way. I mean, it was a shock. You know, it was a complete shock.
I like when you shake your head for emphasis because your bells ring, and it seems like the points are made with more, you know, just a little bit more gusto when you shake your head and the bells ring. But honestly, one of the folks on the crew reminded me before we did the show tonight that I walked up to the FSN truck before the state championship down in the University of Richmond Stadium, and I stood there and I said, I think Robinson is going to win this game in a blowout.
Right.
Because I thought that there was a tactical advantage that Robinson had on the with their defensive front versus Lansdowne's offensive line, which was a little bit undersized and a little bit less experienced than even the line they had last year against Westfield. But what happened in the game, which, by the way, in case we haven't mentioned, it was a 47-20 victory for the Eagles. They win the state title over the Rams on Saturday afternoon. Was the offensive line played better than anyone expected.
Right.
Robinson was rushing 4 to begin with. They added a 5th in the box as the game went on, but by that point, Lansdowne had already established an insurmountable lead, thanks to some incredible offensive play by a kid named Percy Harvin, which we'll get to in a second or two. But I understand we have some highlights.
Okay.
Let's take a look at what happened down in Richmond last Saturday. And just an incredible game to watch. I mean, you see it here. Lansdowne and Robinson. Lansdowne, of course, is in the black and silver Raiders colors, and Robinson is in the whites. And Matt Goff here had some time to throw the football during the game. A little bit too much time there. That's the Percy Harvin. That's number 11. You're going to see a lot of him.
That's his first interception.
That's his first of 3 interceptions in the game. The kid's a junior, and really was, for my money, the most exciting individual effort I've ever seen in a high school football game. This kid and the way he played. You see Marcus Black to Harvin, and again, receiving the ball, he had 91 yards receiving. Rushing the ball, he had 201 yards on the ground. And the thing that killed Robinson, and you see here, I mean, he's making things happen just by himself. I mean, it was just incredible to watch. What killed Robinson, and defensive back Nick Altemeyer kind of referenced this during after the football game, they found innovative ways to get Harvin the football. They put him under center. When they played L.C. Bird and Oscar Smith, he was mostly just a wide receiver. But they found innovative ways to get him the football. And that's really what kind of made the difference in the game. Here you see Lucas Caparelli with a great run before halftime to get Robinson back in the game. But all day, I mean, you know, they didn't really get too much pressure on Marcus Black, the quarterback, until late in the second half. He had a lot of time. He had 2 good receivers to throw to all game. And this is what I'm talking about: direct snap to Harvin, and he just makes it happen.
And I think if you look at Robinson, maybe, you know, definitely the bigger team on the defensive line, but also probably, you know, not as athletic as, you know, you would have liked to see. You know, going up against a team with speedsters such as Harvin. I mean, if he can get to the edge, he's going to make things happen. And I think last year, what was surprising is Westfield's defense, who was not highly rated, you know, by any means, you know, was able to get pressure on the quarterback and really contain the talent on that side. Robinson, more the bruising type of a defense, was not.
And here you see it in the second half. They were really able to. They started to get more penetration and really made things happen defensively, but offensively, outside of a few plays here and there, this I think was one that was called back. They made some mistakes penalty-wise.
Okay.
There was a very key play after a lightning delay in the game where Robinson was called for a false start and short-circuited what would have been a fourth down play for him. They just made a lot of mistakes that you're not really used to seeing Robinson make. And defensively, they had some stops, but not every stop. And Lansdowne found their spots and really made it happen.
And there you see the quarterback getting plenty of time to throw. I know in last year's game, Westfield, was able to blitz a lot. Eddie Royal, the fine wide receiver of Virginia Tech, now actually played linebacker some in that game and was used as a blitzer.
And it looks like you're watching this on a battlefield with the smoke going in front. That was actually from the snack stand downstairs.
Sure wasn't a smoke delay? Oh, there's a flag right there.
Yeah, but Caparelli, Goff, you're talking about two players that are both juniors that both had outstanding seasons for Robinson. This is a team that's not going anywhere. I mean, they're obviously going to be back. And then you see, turnovers here and there. Goff had a couple of picks, 3 picks actually to Harvin. But again, Robinson just wasn't their day. I mean, nothing really went their way. I mean, Lansdowne was able to build an incredible lead. That was actually something that was flagged, as you can see right there, for being a little excessive. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't hurt, but it could have.
Right.
But like I said, I mean, Robinson is a team that's going to bring back a lot of weapons. They're going to bring back the running back. They're going to bring back the quarterback. It's a team that can easily get back to the state championship level next season with the amount of talent they're going to bring back, and probably add. And again, defensively, the scheme works when it works and doesn't when it doesn't.
Right.
And unfortunately, in the first half, I think they were a little bit overwhelmed.
Okay. And I think, offensively, they probably made a mistake in picking on Harvin so much. I know he told you after the game, that he was even surprised they were throwing at him, like he was a sorry old player out there.
Yeah, I asked him what phase of his game surprised him the most, and he said defensively, he did not expect to have the day he had, and he was quite frankly surprised that Robinson threw the ball at him so much as a cornerback. And I asked him, have teams traditionally been throwing at you this season? And he said, no, they typically avoid me. And he almost kind of indicated that he thought it was a flaw in Robinson's offensive game plan that they went after him so much. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I mean, the kid made some great plays. You can't really fault Robinson for trying to throw the ball downfield a little bit, and Harvin happens to be the guy covering.
And I think if you look at the highlights here, when Robinson's running the ball, they're most effective. And maybe you have to question why they try to pass so much. If they could have held the ball so much, and
they really didn't pass all that much. It's just that
when they did, it was damaging.
In the first half, what really kind of surprised the Northern Region reporters that were up in the booth was how little Robinson had insofar as drives that were prolonged by runs.
Okay.
They really didn't get that sort of Robinson running attack where it looks like there's holes on several points on the line. Caparelli goes for 8, then the next guy goes for 10, and that sort of thing. They just didn't have it. This kid had it. Yeah, I mean, it was just incredible watching the Harvin.
Yeah, if you look at Harvin, maybe not the prototypical running back body, and maybe not a prototypical wide receiver, but he's kind of that in-between guy that can do a lot of good things.
Well, and that's the thing, is that he's a wide receiver. And when I talked to their coach, Chris Beatty, before the game and doing the preview for it, I was sort of surprised when he said, our leading rusher is not our running back. Yeah, he said it's our wide receiver, and I didn't quite get why that was until I actually watched the kid play. And they use him as a quarterback, they use him as a running back, as a wide receiver. He gets the ball on end arounds and things like that. The kid had an 89-yard punt return for a touchdown. He had a 92-yard run for a touchdown. 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. For the life of me, I can't remember the last time I saw one player take over a football game like he took it over. And it's tough when you sit there and say, one player made the difference, but honestly, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 201 yards rushing, and 91 yards receiving. One player made the difference.
Right, and it was funny because on the Bendorf bench a couple weeks ago, I was asking Coach Bendorf, can one player win a state game? And he basically said that hasn't been his experience.
Yeah.
Lucas Caparelli, he didn't feel like he could do it. It's a total team effort. But I mean, here you go. Percy Harvin was the difference in this game.
And the thing about it is that. You talk to the Robinson players afterwards. It's not like this kid came out of nowhere. I mean, they knew he was there. He's a junior. He's got a lot of press downstate as being one of the most explosive players in the state. they knew he was coming.
Right.
But there's such a difference between seeing a player on film and actually seeing what he does on the football field that until you actually line up against him, you don't realize how explosive he is. And looking at that film, looking at a guy who can take it right, stop, take it left, go around 5 people, and then run for a touchdown, how do you possibly measure that when you look at it on film?
That's the great thing about the state playoffs. You usually go up against people that you've never seen before. Up here, Evan Royster's a great player. Lucas Caparelli's a great player. It's all speculation and it's all film work when you're dealing with playoffs on the state level. Until you get on the field, you're right. You're never going to know. And now they know.
And now they know, exactly. Whenever you get a game like this on a state level where it's a blowout, there's obviously some lingering feelings. I know on some of the internet message boards that we frequent, there's been some talk, and actually we received a letter to the editor about some vandalism to Robinson cars in the parking lot, about how Lansdowne fans were taunting Robinson fans after the game. One of the questions that was sort of lingering in the fourth quarter of the game was the way that Lansdowne almost looked like they were using a couple onside kicks after scoring their touchdowns. I talked to their coach after the game, and he said it was merely them trying to pooch punt, or pooch kickoff, to try to keep the ball away from Caparelli. To me, they were a little bit closer than that. It almost looked like they were trying to pull one of those Oklahoma, Nebraska, let's get to 70 kind of things. But I believe him. I mean, he's got a ton of respect for Mark Bendorf. He played for Mark at Chantilly. I don't think that they were trying to run up the score, but I can see how that perception might have been lingering if you were there and watching.
Right. I mean, Chris Beatty has been, involved in. I'm sure he'd love to coach up in here, and I know he's probably applied to a number of jobs up here. He doesn't get them. Maybe he's out to prove something against a Northern Region, champion. Say, hey, there's good football down here, and especially coming off of a year where they just they were beaten by Westfield pretty handily.
Right.
He wants to make a statement in a state game.
It's interesting you should bring that up, because that's sort of a debate that we had in the newsroom this week, was whether or not a guy like Beatty would come up here. Could he get the kind of athletes he gets down there up here? Is he going to have a quarterback like Marcus Black? Is he going to have 2 wide receivers like he has? He has a running back who's also his linebacker who's going to Virginia Tech. I mean, is he going to have that kind of talent up here is the question for the kind of scheme he plays. I mean, he's a passing guy.
Right.
It's a real run and fun and gun kind of thing. And so that's the question.
Yeah, you'd probably have to get into a good situation where you're getting good talent like Tom Urbanek did at Westfield. Originally he didn't have Eddie Royal. He kind of made his way to Westfield. Evan Royster kind of made his way to Westfield. Maybe not transferring in, but if good programs are out there, good kids are going to find their way there. I don't know a lot of attractive jobs up in the Northern Region that are going to be coming available soon. Maybe 1 or 2, but he's got a good thing down there at Lansdowne. I can't see him leaving. Two state finals in 2 years. Has a chance to get back there next year with Harvin only being a junior.
Yeah.
He's in a good situation.
But then again, Caparelli a junior, Goff a junior. Robinson brings back a ton, but like you said, I think this week, you look at a team like Centerville. There's a lot of other teams in the Northern Region that are going to be a little bit better than they were this year, next year. So it's not a guarantee that Robinson gets back to the point they were this year. But obviously, when you're Robinson, when you've done what they've done, making the regional title game, I think the last 3 years. I mean, hey, until proven otherwise, I think they're the team.
You're gonna see the same carousel of teams. Westfield, Centerville, Robinson. Usually they're the hot pick at the beginning of the year, and it's hard to pick against them.
Exactly. Now, while I was at the football, you were at
the South Lakes Gymnastics Invitational.
Fantastic. And how did that work out for you?
It worked out great. It was the 22nd annual Invitational at South Lakes High School in Reston, and a familiar winner. Lake Braddock, won the team title, and I want to say they've won close to double-digit team championships at the Invitational. It was a great meet. It's the one big meet early in the year. It usually happens before the new year, and it's chance for some of these kids who usually get the dual meets, and there's 2 to 3 kids in the stands watching. It's a big meet to kind of perform under pressure. They're only going to see that at the district and regional level in 2 months.
Right.
So it's a big meet. It's kind of a big deal. But there's not a whole lot of pressure on the kids. They go out and try new routines. They know that they're not in postseason form.
Now, we've talked about before in the last couple of years sort of the migration of some of the better gymnasts away from the high school game and into club gymnastics. Are there a collection of elite gymnasts this year that we should keep our eye on? Are they still involved in high school gymnastics, or are they mostly in the club level?
There's some familiar names. Christy Swanson at Oakton, Caitlin Hoey, at Robinson, are just two good gymnasts, and they've been around for a while. But I think you especially see in Loudoun and maybe a little less in Fairfax, but you see kids coming back usually. But more often you see kids once they get to a certain level in high school, usually early on as freshmen or sophomores, they get to a point in high school where it's like, I'm good enough where I can compete on the club level all the time. The only thing that really keeps them in high school is being part of a team, having that kind of a break. It's an easier atmosphere in high
Right.
school. The equipment maybe isn't as good, which is why they like to stick with club. But you're not going to see the top gymnasts competing at the high school level anymore. And I know with that migration out, there's a lot of thinking out there that is high school girls gymnastics going to last? Boys got the axe a couple years ago. Who knows about girls gymnastics?
And on top of that, it's an issue that we've covered as well, the coaching issue, where you've got coaches that take on 3 or 4 teams. I mean, Mike Cooper must be coaching half the region by now.
Yep.
And it makes you wonder whether or not that combined with the fact that there is another outlet for these gymnasts in the club level, whether that's going to make girls gymnastics go the way of boys gymnastics, or Crystal Pepsi, or fill in your pun. It's unfortunate because it's a great sport. It's a great outlet for young female athletes, and it's been that way for many years. And the participation numbers seem to be there, even if the elite gymnasts aren't, and even if the coaches aren't. I mean, there does seem to be enough interest to warrant it continuing.
Yes. I mean, sometimes it's difficult because you see certain teams and there's 4 kids, and you see certain teams and there's 25. And I know there's gymnasts that a lot of gymnasts can't make it to every high school practice, every high school meet. If they come to a couple practices, and make a couple meets a year, that qualifies them, to compete in the postseason. And I mean, that's the way it's going to have to be, because if you make these kids, compete at every meet, make 5 practices a week, it's not, they're gonna drop out. So it's not going to work.
And also this weekend was the Northern Region Classic wrestling at Fairfax High School. A great event. One of my favorite events of the year. I was kind of upset that I couldn't make it this year because you get literally upwards of 20, 25 teams from all around the area. I mean, downstate, from Maryland, all over the place, and it's a great event. Westfield, I guess, finished second at the Classic, and then you saw some of the individual wrestlers that will definitely challenge for state titles. Also, when Mustafa Ibrahim from West Springfield was a champion, a few others from the area as well. Of course, what's noteworthy about this event was 2 things. One, Hayfield doesn't attend the event, and they're usually a pretty big dog in the region when it comes to wrestling. And Robinson obviously was missing a lot of its better wrestlers who were downstate participating in the football game, including Brent Jones, who lost on his in the state tournament last year, and a lot of people are feeling as though he will be not a cinch, but a guy who
probably one of the sure bets.
Yeah, one of the sure bets to at least challenge for a state title at the state level this year. But the Classic is always a great event.
It's kind of like gymnastics. The wrestlers get a chance to knock the rust off. See competition other than their wrestling teammate in high school. They get to perform in front of a live audience who's really backing them. So it's another good event before the new year.
And we would be remiss to mention that this event last weekend took place in a newly named field house at Fairfax High School, the L. Patrick Lang Field House, named after the late Director of Student Activities at Fairfax High School. I had a chance to go to the naming ceremony, which took place before a Fairfax boys basketball game last week. Very solemn, but yet celebratory. I mean, he was a great man. The impact he had on that high school can't be measured, and it's great to see. He passed away in March, so I mean it's great to see how quickly that things have moved through, and the city was cooperative, and everybody else was cooperative as far as renaming the field house for him, and it couldn't happen to someone who deserved it more. I mean, his memory is going to be lasting at that high school for decades to come.
And Fairfax is going to be in a new district next year, moving over to the Concord. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of start anew over there for the Rebels.
Absolutely. Actually, one last note about that. It's kind of funny. Tim Gordon, the current Director of Student Activities at Fairfax, mentioned the irony in the fact that the event, the Fairfax Yorktown basketball game, and the ceremony that preceded it were free. You came in, you were supposed to maybe give a donation for a charity, but it was free. And the irony, of course, is that Pat Lang, notorious as the guy who would, check the gate numbers.
Make sure
as
you
soon
pay
as he could.
twice.
Yeah, make sure you pay twice to get in. Just a great guy, and continues to be missed by everybody in the region. Want to mention a quick note. Holiday basketball tournaments are coming up. Always a great time. Always very exciting. You've got the Bohanka tournament at Chantilly. You've got the Book Jamming tournament. Flint Hill and I think Centerville are partnering on that this year. Want to mention two tournaments that really kind of piqued my interest as far as bringing in competition that you don't usually see, which I think is important for any of these high school tournaments, is you want to see teams you don't normally get to see. You want to see your team face teams they don't normally get to see.
I mean, certain clubs choose to kind of go away. You know, I know South Lakes boys are going to Kentucky.
Right.
You know, Oakton and Hernan teams are teams that have usually gone, maybe down to Florida or someplace to kind of see some of that.
Right.
And it's also good to kind of bring that here because I know it's with the society we're living in, it's not always the best thing to go traveling all over and traipsing all over.
Right. Wakefield High School in Arlington is holding a basketball tournament beginning on December 27th. They are involved. Annandale is involved, but that's where the Northern Region participation ends. They're also going to have Anacostia from DC, H.D. Woodson from DC, Spingarn from DC, C.H. Flowers from PG County, and then from downstate, George Wythe.
Okay.
An amazing basketball program.
Usually, a state title contender.
And also Patrick Henry. So that's going to be a great tournament to watch. The games are at 2:05, 4:30, and 6:15. Okay. I think it runs from the 27th to the 29th.
Okay. So I mean, usually when you see DC teams coming to your tournament, it's a good thing. I know DC usually gets probably more press than the Virginia teams, and a lot of times rightfully so.
Right.
But I mean, it's a good tournament to get a bunch of different teams involved from Maryland and the local teams.
And then also the Hubert Davis Tournament of Champions is the second one that Lake Braddock has held. Begins on the 27th and runs to the 29th. The championship game is on the 29th at 7:30 p.m. And you're talking a heck of a lineup. You got Westfield, you got Hilton playing Herndon in the first round, Potomac, Maryland's in the tournament, and you got Edison, which upset Hayfield last week, taking on Lake Braddock in the first round of the tournament. And like you mentioned when you saw the bracket, you might have yourself a Westfield-Herndon game in the second round of this tournament.
I mean, Westfield and Herndon, people think they could definitely be the two best teams in the region. They're in the same district, and they could end up playing 3 times this year. This could be the precursor to 2 district max later on. And who knows? They could be regional finalists depending on how things kind of shake out. Lake Braddock always a good defensive team. Can usually stay with any team just because of Coach Mitras.
Right.
Edison had an upset I guess earlier this
against Hayfield, right?
Against Hayfield. And then get some teams from down south. Hilton, a team last year that was in the state playoffs, so a good tournament for Hubert Davis.
There you go. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the mess that is baseball in DC. What's your take on it, my friend?
Well, I guess how it is now. They're going to need some sort of private funding. The DC Council said 50% private funding. People at baseball are saying that's not really feasible.
They're saying it's not the deal they agreed to, and they're right. But at the same time, you got to wonder what kind of deal were they making in DC if you weren't going to get the funding for the stadium that you promised you'd get.
Right.
I mean, they said $400 million being the number. Safeco Field in Seattle went for $600 million. I mean, I never believed $400 million being the construction price for a stadium in DC.
You never hear it cost underruns. Let's put it
exactly.
that way.
So it's an interesting problem that baseball has faced, because if you can't put a team in DC, where are you going to put it?
I mean, are you going to play in Montreal again? Next year, just because you don't have an immediate site? Do you go to Puerto Rico again? I know they just signed a bunch of Latino players.
Right.
I'm sure they'd love it down there, but who knows? I mean, can you go to Northern Virginia and say we're sorry we didn't choose you? Give us another chance. Who knows? Northern
Virginia's got its own problems in securing land for a stadium. I mean, there's Norfolk in play. I mean, maybe Portland gets back involved. Maybe Las Vegas gets back involved. Maybe you put the thing in Wyoming. Who the heck knows? But the point of it is that Washington, D.C. was by far the best candidate for this team.
Yep.
And it makes you wonder, if it doesn't go to D.C., maybe you stick it someplace for a year and then contract it maybe. I mean, maybe that's the way you go. Maybe this team is just destined not to be anywhere and just, go the way of the dodo. Maybe you get rid of the franchise, and maybe you get rid of Tampa while you're at it. But I'm not saying anything. But
that's neither here nor there.
But it's a stunning trend of events. I mean, there are people that have been waiting for baseball to come back to DC for decades.
Right.
And now
if they don't get it turned around by December 31st,
yeah,
then it's not happening.
It's not happening at all. In fact, the Nationals, I think, were supposed to unveil their uniforms today and canceled it because of this whole mess that's happening right now. I know.
Put
it's
them up in
amazing.
flames.
Amazing, amazing. Let's take care of some business before we run out of time. Well, I want to thank everybody first for watching the Fairfax Sports Report all year long. It's the holiday season. This is the last show at Brian's Grill here in Fairfax, and they've been a gracious host. And hopefully next in 2005, everybody can come down and be a part of the show at Brian's. It's a great place to be on a Wednesday night. I want to thank everybody for watching and supporting the show, and come back next year for great hoops action. I want to remind everybody that there's plenty to do. Of course, we've got the high school game of the week, Northern Region basketball Saturdays at 6 on Cox 35. And also the Fairfax Sports Report, myself, Jeffrey, Joey Kamide, and the rest of the gang will come back.
Even Dan Rubin.
Maybe even Dan Rubin will come back in January with wrestling, basketball, plenty of stuff. Wednesdays at 10, Thursdays at 8, Fridays at 12:30 p.m. on Comcast Channel 10. And, of course, if you have internet access, which I'm sure you probably do, the Fairfax Sports Network is on the web at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. For all kinds of goodies. I want to thank Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. They are our teammates, and we would not be here if not for their efforts.
We wouldn't be here. We'd be over across the street at the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Rocking out to
We'd
Rudolph.
be doing it from your basement, basically. It'd be us, and we'd be talking into a shoestring, and no one would even be knowing we were doing the show at all.
They would not.
Now, we are both, we're closing in on the final moments of the show, so we're going to take a little time to talk about something very personal to you and I, and I'm sure everybody else will be interested as well. We're both Mets fans.
Yes, we are.
And this week something strange happened, where Pedro Martinez is now a member of our pitching staff. You've heard me kvetching about it all week. What do you actually think about that?
I mean, the way the Mets' luck has gone in the past, few years, Pedro's gonna, make his first start. His arm's gonna fly off, But hopefully, it's gonna be a turnaround year for us. But I'm not, too optimistic.
That's right, baby. Reverse the curse. Do we have to pay the midget too, or does he come sort of a package
comes
deal?
free of charge.
Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. Fairfax Sports Report. Thank you for the support. Have a great and safe happy holidays and a safe New Year. I'm not happy with Pedro. I don't want him in New York. I don't want him anywhere near the Mets.
Where's David Cohn? 6
innings of great pitching, and then we got to depend on a bullpen. What kind of ace is that, honestly? Don't want it.
I don't want it.
Get me Oil Can Boyd and $10 million. And
Floyd Yeomans.
Floyd Yeomans, exactly. Get me Al Nepper and Tim Naring. And
let's go from there.
And then we'll go from there, exactly. And then that's all I can say. I don't want Pedro anywhere near us.
It's a little cold for baseball
Well, exactly, but that's all anyone's talking about.